Hello, and welcome to Opening Doors podcast. Today, my guest is Megan Cohen. Megan is the founder and executive director of the Philadelphia Grace Project, and she is also works at Promont Drug Treatment Center. Megan has a very intense story that she is going to share with us today. And I'm really looking forward to you hearing how she was able to overcome some really tough things in her life. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Why don't you start where you feel comfortable?
Sure. Um, yeah, so I mean it's definitely a long story. Do you want me to kind of give the brief
Sure.
summary? Okay. So I started using drugs when the summer that I graduated college, or I'm sorry, high school. And it was something that nobody, including myself, saw coming. I grew up in Bucks County. I came from a good family. And from like the outside looking in, everything seemed great. The part that people didn't necessarily know or see was like the chaos that was going on at home and going on internally. So some of like the early warning signs that cropped up was like I started acting out in school. I started breaking rules, anything to kind of get outside of myself. I had issues with self-harm at one point. I
Mm.
had issues with, working out too much or watching what I was eating at a young age, like to an extreme extent. Um, but I didn't know any of these things like could translate to the fact that I had a higher chance of becoming addicted to a substance than the average person. Um, and nobody expected it because for the most part, like I was a good kid growing up. I was like the sweetheart in my family and everyone thought I was going to go really far. And I also like, the stigma that I try so hard to break in all the work that I do today, I was somebody who fed into that stigma. I was like, oh, I'm too smart to become addicted to drugs. So when I started drinking in school and like, smoking marijuana and stuff like that, like I didn't think anything of it because I was like, well, I'm never going to have a severe drug problem, like I'm just having fun. I'm being a regular middle school kid. I'm being a regular high school kid. And as time went on, like I started experimenting with more stuff and telling myself still that like I was never going to develop a problem. And the summer I graduated, it was more of like I was curious. Like I wanted to know what was so great about drugs that, this kid that I dated in high school, couldn't stop and like he couldn't choose me over drugs. And most people would be like, okay, I'm going to stay away. But I was like, what's so great about these things?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I tried it and I remember like and the first thing I tried was Percocets. So, and I remember like getting sick, but being like, I don't care about anything. And I couldn't wait to do it again. And that was very, and looking back now, very concerning. But at the time, I still was like, I will
I've
never
got
become an
control.
addict. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I got this. I'm just having fun. I just graduated high school. And things just really started progressing from there. Within a few weeks, I was using just about every day.
Oh
Um,
my.
yeah, very, very
Yeah.
quick progression in my story throughout the whole thing. And I got to a point where, I started dating somebody else that was using heroin. And the Percocets, they were expensive. So it was like, well, how am I going to pay for this habit? Right. And I always said like I would never do heroin. I would never switch to like cheaper drugs because like I was too good for that. And, just all these delusions that we tell ourselves. So I come up with this bright idea, which breaks my heart now because, it impacted other people's lives as well. But I decided I was going to start selling heroin. Um, yeah.
Okay. So you just went, whew.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was arrested within the first probably like year and a half that I used for. I was arrested like three different times. My progression was very, very quick.
So what was your plan after graduation before you got on drugs?
So I planned to go to community college. Now, the crazy part is I didn't decide to go to community, and this in itself was a warning sign. I usually talk about in my story, so I'm glad you asked. Um, I didn't want to leave my friends that were older than me, that were like still living at home with their parents, but like could get alcohol every weekend. And, so that was my plan. I was like, oh, I'll get a degree, but I'm going to do it like from home with all my friends where I'm comfortable. And it didn't work out. I finally, now I'm a college graduate, but I two attempts at community college. And both times, within the first like couple months, I stopped going. So that was the plan.
But that was because you were using at the time?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so you were dealing heroin. And so clearly at that point you were did you start using it? Because after a while, Percocet generally leads to heroin.
Yes. I would say I started using it probably within 2 weeks of selling it. Which again, when I started selling it, I'm never going to use it. And yeah, it was very, very quick. And then quickly after that, I would say I was never going to use a syringe and, started that. So yeah.
And how long was it before your family figured out how bad you were?
So they knew that something was going on because I wasn't myself, right? I wasn't family oriented like I was growing up. My everything that used to be like a priority to me stopped being a priority. Like I just cared about going out with my friends. So as far as they knew, like that they thought I just wanted to be with my friends all the time. I was starting to act out as far as like, short tempered. Um, and then like, at that point in time, because I was selling drugs, I hadn't started stealing from anyone yet. So they didn't see that part, but I was stealing from stores. So the first like big indication that my mom got, other than knowing her daughter wasn't, and she had come to me a ton of times, like, what's going on? But she never expected me to do drugs. And that's what kept people from knowing for a long time, is people just didn't expect it from me. Um, so she had received some stuff in the mail about charges that I got, and that was her first big indicator. And it just, she kept asking, I kept denying, and eventually it got to a point where it was so bad, I knew it was just a matter of time till she found out. And I also I wanted to go to rehab. I wanted to get help, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to fully stop. I wanted to get help to lessen my habit, so it wasn't such a chore. And at that point, I got honest with my mom, and I said, "Hey, I need to tell you something."
I need help.
Yeah,
And I mean, I read in an article online that went to 70
71,
rehabs.
71.
How is that possible, Megan?
I was a big runner. So, it was 71 admissions to rehab. Now I only completed 60 what was it? 65 of that, or I'm sorry, I made from 65. I completed 6 of them. So people are always like, how did that? So there was times where in 1 week I was admitting to 2 or 3 different rehabs, because I'd go in, I'd start feeling sick, and I would leave, or I'd go into some place and I would somehow get past the withdrawal, right? And then I started feeling feelings, and I hated who I was. The person that I was disgusted me, and I didn't want to face that person. So then I would run back to like what I knew and what would numb everything. So that's how it ended up getting so high. But there was this part in me that, and it's so obvious throughout my story, where something inside was like, get out of this, get help, like do something. But then there was this other side of me that was like, no, you don't want to face those things. And this is what you know. So it was like this constant internal battle of, wanting to get clean and wanting to get sober, but not necessarily knowing how, and not having hope is what it came down to. I didn't think it was possible. So I jumped in and out of treatment centers, jails, recovery houses, all that.
Wow. Wow. So you really had that angel and devil.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. So then at some point, your mother said, enough is enough. Which I unfortunately, that's what a lot of counselors will tell parents. You've
That's what
got,
I tell parents nowadays.
right? Yeah. Like
That boundary.
it's the most brutal thing I think a parent has to do, would
Absolutely.
have to do, is to say to their child, I can't help you
Mhm.
because helping you is really harming you.
Yeah, and it harms them too. And one of the biggest things, like, that I tell families or significant others or whoever it is, when dealing with people that are trying to get help, like, protect yourself first, because what happens is, as a sick person like that's struggling with the disease of addiction, we're impacting everybody around us. And that was so true with me. I mean, what I put my mom through and the people that love me is absolutely horrible. Um, and she tried so hard, and telling your child, like, hey, you have to get out of my house, like, it goes against everything that a mother's instinct tells her to do, like protect and hold them close and take care of. And it was so hard for her, but it was one of the best things that she ever did. And I needed that. I needed her to do that, because she was the one person that I was always like, she's never going to turn her back on me. She's never going to kick me out. She finally stopped depriving me of my bottom. And all this time, she had thought she was trying to help me and show me love. And really, it was depriving me of this bottom that I needed, because I needed to feel the pain of losing her and everything else. That was me.
Yeah.
Not everyone needs to lose all of that. I needed to lose all of it.
Right. But I mean, it's really hard. As a parent to do that. I'm sure your mother's heart was broken in a thousand
Absolutely.
pieces.
It was. It was. I mean, she was losing sleep over it. It killed her. It killed her. Every time that the phone would ring, I mean, for months, years, she was thinking it was a call that I was dead. I took a lot more than just the things that I stole from my mom, like her sense of security, her sense of peace. She, I'll cry. It kills me. Because she went through a lot. Now we're very close. We're very,
Right.
very
But
close.
that's
But
the thing.
yeah,
It's important for listeners to understand that addiction doesn't happen to one person. Addiction happens to the entire family system.
right.
And in a lot of ways, in some ways it happens, you know, in some ways the family system can cause it, but who knows what causes it
Right.
all the time. I think that's hard to say, but it certainly takes the family system to help heal.
Absolutely.
So there was a point in your addiction when your mom said to you, you got to leave. You can't stay. I can't have you in the home using drugs. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, basically, she had just said she wasn't going to watch me kill myself, and she wasn't going to allow me to kill myself under her roof. Um, and it was so powerful, because I always thought, like, up till that point, she was never going to kick me out. And I'd been homeless by choice a couple times prior to that in a couple different states, and including out in Kensington and Philadelphia. You know, because I didn't want to face her. And like this last time around, what happened was, I came home from Detroit where I was homeless, and I showed up at her doorstep, and she had told me that, if I was using, I wasn't welcome to come back home. So here I am, lying to her, saying, I'm not using, I just miss my family. And I show up on her doorstep, and you can take one look at me and just tell. I mean, my face was picked apart. I was skinny. Um, so she told me, like, you have to get help. Um, Fast forward to, less than a week, I think it was. And that's when she told me, you got to go. And it was just different. It was this different feeling, because I had to hit that bottom. Like I said, it was, up to this point, like I kept being deprived of my bottom, and it was all out of love. She didn't realize that she was doing that. She was just trying to love me. And now it was a different type of feeling. I From having that choice, like I said, I didn't want to look her in the face, because like of the shame that I felt all the other times around. But again, it was different because it was by choice. And I always knew, like, if I wanted to take a shower, I wanted something to eat or a warm bed to sleep in, like I could go home to mom's. And now I didn't have that. I didn't have that luxury. Um, and the only person that really, my mom said, like, she's like, if you get help, like, I'm here. She didn't tell me she was completely done with me. She just wasn't going to
Right.
let me kill myself. And the only person that I had left that was still trying to help was my grandmother. And my grandmother had let me stay in her sunroom. And she would just lock the door, and then she would open it and let me come in periodically to use the bathroom or whatever.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. And rightfully and understandably so, because despite that, I still ended up breaking into her house and stealing from her. And it's just horrible. And obviously at that point, things started to take a change. Um, and that was really like the pivotal, my mom initially kicking me out and then leading to what happened with my grandmother. The combination of those two things is what ultimately led me to getting sober and to taking those first steps.
That must have been so hard for you when you got sober to be able to reconcile that.
Yeah, it destroyed me. My grandmother was, I mean, she was always a huge part of my life, and even to this day, I mean, she's just,
Oh, you're lucky you still have her.
I still have her. I do. And she's just, I mean, she's so proud, and it's beautiful because I never thought that, there was any fixing that. And I never thought that she would be able to say that she was proud of me. And it's hard because part of what I stole from her was items that my grandfather, who was also, I mean, he was my world. And he passed away. But I stole things that he collected while he was alive that he like was leaving for the family, like gold coins and stuff like that. And he didn't get to see me get sober. Um, but she has been able to, and she's been consistent. Like she was just at the last fundraiser that the Grace Project had. She comes to our galas. I have the code for the lockbox that has the key to her house now. So it's just so crazy because it took a while to get past that, and understandably so. I didn't think she was ever going to talk to me again. When I had around 9 months sober, she came and sat down with me, and I was able to make my formal amends to her. And then it took a lot longer for my uncles to sit down with me, because of what I put their mother through and what I put their sister through. And I remember, me and my grandmom had started working on that relationship and her trusting me again. But there was so much damage done to so many people in my life. And when she had gotten, and it was because of, emergency situations that were like, okay, we need to be able to get into this house if anything happens. And they were concerned when they found out that I had the key. This was probably when I had a little over a year. Um, and my mom was like, I remember she was like offended. She's like, why are they like, you're doing and I was like, Mom, I get it. Like they have every
Yeah.
right. They haven't been able to see or like interact with the version of me that I am today. And that was actually what prompted a sit down with them where I was able to get completely honest with them, with everything and start building that relationship too. So now I'm blessed to say that I have my whole family back. And I didn't for a long time, like I didn't think it was possible. And I'm close with all of them. I talk to all of them. I can count on all of them. They all
Beautiful.
know they can count on me. So it's really cool.
How many years have you been sober?
So I will have 6 years in July.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
It's very surreal. Even every year that passes by, I'm just like, wow, and how far my life has come in that short period of time because there was no I always say like I chased recovery alcoholically like the same way that like I chased drugs and alcohol, because I did everything, and I just like went above and beyond every type of like treatment that was suggested to me. I did, and here I am, and it's just it's such a different life. It's a life beyond my wildest dreams, which they talk about like in recovery
That you
literature,
can have, right, that you can have when you get sober.
and it's
So
true.
yeah, no, we kind of fast forwarded. We didn't get to the really bad stuff, which I think it's important for people to hear, just to
Yeah.
show truly how far you've come. I think people in Philadelphia that are listening understand what Kensington is.
Yeah.
That Kensington is ground zero for the opioid epidemic and is a terrifying, terrifying place, a place where newscasters are afraid to go,
Mhm.
a place where, when you were there, I'm guessing it was very much just an open air drug market,
Mhm.
awful place.
Yeah, and it's Since I've been sober and with Grace Project going out there, like it's continued to get worse. It's so tough because there's so many beautiful souls out there. I mean, I look around and it's like it's a bunch of me's walking around, just people that are so sick and so broken, and they're vulnerable, just like I was, and horrible things happen to me because of that. Like, I was out there by myself. I was vulnerable. um I'm lucky to be alive. And there's tons of other women and even men that are out there in the same situation. There's just so much going on out there, between it being an open air drug market, between, like turf wars with the different blocks
Oh,
and drugs and stuff like that, all the violence. You know, it's just dangerous. And then there's a lot of people too, like, and we see it all the time, like people that go missing and they're never found, and their last known whereabouts were Kensington. And whether that's an overdose and they're somewhere, on the track somewhere or in the woods, or somebody took them, or it was sex trafficking, whatever it may be. It's just it's a lot of stuff. Like, people know it's bad out there. They don't know how dangerous it is. And then a lot of people also don't necessarily, like, sometimes, like I said, those beautiful souls are out there are forgotten because it's hidden behind how scary Kensington can be. So people don't really want to step in and try to help, or try to make it better. And it's heartbreaking.
but the Grace Project goes in how often?
Every week, every Thursday night.
Every Thursday night.
Yeah.
And people must be shocked that you're walking around.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the beginning, like, a lot of people were kind of like, is that such a good idea? And, but the way that we do it, and everybody out there, like, they know who we are now. And there's also, like, I don't know, there's like this level of respect and trust, because I mean, we're dealing with people that are on drugs out there, a lot of them. So we've had some people, not because they're bad, but because of, like, the impact the drugs are having on them, where they kind of start acting out. And other people will step in and be like, hey, like, this is the Grace Project, calm down.
These people are here because they care about us.
Yeah, because they know that we're just out there to help. So there's now, granted, we always know that there's things that can happen. I mean, there was a shootout that happened the one week when we had our team out there, and one of the bullets went right past one of our volunteers into a store behind him. And I'm
Wow.
talking, like, it missed him by not much. So we know the risks that we're taking going out there. But it's a risk that everybody that goes out decides is worth taking, that somebody has to take.
It's beautiful level of commitment. Very sadly, a lot of them have been just kind of forgotten by society or pushed away, like, "Oh, we don't wanna see that."
Right. It's forgotten. There's no other way to really describe it. And then and it's forgotten by a lot, but most of them are remembered by at least someone. And that person's looking for them and cares about. And it's just this it's just heavy, and it's sad, because everybody out there matters to somebody, or mattered to somebody at one point. And I just, like I said, I go out there and I'm like, because I've done it all. I've been through horrible things. I've done horrible things. And here I am today. So, like, I look around, and when I'm talking to people out there, sometimes, like, I have to remind myself, I have to remember, I can't force somebody to want this, because sometimes I just want to shake people and be like, you can have it so much better. But I understand, like, I was just like
You
that.
get it.
So
Yeah.
all that we hope is that, like, we can kind of recreate, like, the experience that ended up getting me out of Kensington, which was kindness from a stranger, and it planted that seed. And then other ones watering it, and eventually it was like, okay, I have a little bit of hope and faith. So that's what we're trying to do when we're out there.
Give those people those
Yeah,
angels that are
exactly.
coming in that hopefully can get them to remember who they were and who they really are inside.
Exactly, who they were and who they are. And that's, like, the best way to say it, because the last night that I was out there, that's exactly what it was. It was somebody, reminding me that I was still a human, and that somebody saw something in me, and that I mattered. That there was still something deep down, because I towards the end, I mean, I was really just a shell of a person. I didn't have many emotions. I because I was just constantly in this state of of just like denial and like just being out of touch with reality because I was always under the influence. And when I wasn't, I was withdrawing, and all I could think about was how I was going to take away that withdrawal pain. So there wasn't much left, and I would forget, like I would forget who I was, you know. And I just needed somebody to remind me that like Megan was still inside.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important message to let people kind of understand or realize that people that are addicted in that way absolutely don't want to be there.
No.
They just are stuck in a horrible, horrible cycle.
Right.
So you had some angels that came into your life and helped you to realize, okay, maybe I can try.
Yeah. Yeah.
And went to a center and
Yeah. So basically, my last the end of my stay in Kensington, I had a couple of people that I refer to as my angels that, came into my life, and they showed me kindness. And like I say, like part of what I tell people is at the very least, we're planting a seed, because at the very least, even though those weren't the ones that necessarily made me say, okay, I'm ready to go, I'm leaving, they planted that seed that other people could then water. So, it all led up to the last night that I was out there, and, I was walking out of an abandoned house, and I was at the point where, when I tell you, like, I did not want to be alive anymore. And I used to hear people talk about, how they wanted to die, but they didn't have it in them to kill themselves. And I used to be like, oh, come on. Like, I finally understood what that meant. Because that's how I felt. Like, I was at a point where I was begging because, I didn't know if I believed in God, or what I believed in, if I believed in anything at all, but I was like begging every day, like, if there's anything out there, intervene in some way, like either let me die, don't narc me, don't save my life if I'm about to get murdered, like whatever it may be, take me out or put me in jail for the rest of my life, or show me that I can do this, like show me some sort of sign. And this is something that for days I was begging, just begging, like something, intervene in some way, because I feel like nothing, right? And wanting to just feel again, and I don't know, but there was just nothing left. And I walked out of an abandoned house after crying. I was upstairs and I was crying, and like just, again, like looking at the sky, like please, please. And I walked out, and this woman grabbed me, and I turned around thinking I was getting robbed, like I was like ready to fight. And another lady came running over, and she was like, no, 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 she just wants to talk to you. And so the woman who grabbed me, she spoke Spanish, very like
okay.
super super broken English. So this other lady was, that's why she came over, because she was translating. So she was like, she feels like you don't belong out here. Something's drawing her to you. She just wants to know like what your story is. And I was like, okay, that's weird. The whole part of she feels like you don't belong out here after what I was just begging for. But I was, still like, I don't know. So, for some reason, I was completely honest, and I was just like, I'm on heroin and crack. I have felony warrants out right now. I stole from my grandmother. I have absolutely nothing. And then here goes this lady. And I always say when I tell this story, like, I don't recommend doing what she did. We don't bring people home with us when we go out to Kensington. But brought me into her home and let me take a shower, gave me clean clothes, and gave me food. And the woman who was translating didn't come in. And I when I say that, like, I always think back to like, what in her right mind, like why would she do that? There she had nothing, and when I think about it, that there was nothing for me to take. There was barely anything in her home. But here she was still caring and doing something for me. So I remember taking a shower. I got out, there was, clothes sitting on the sink. So I put this little dress on, and I walked downstairs. I ate a little bit of food, and when I went to go leave, we hugged. And again, there wasn't very much communication, and me and her just like pulled back, and we both started crying, like looking into each other's eyes, and started crying. And I've told this story 1,000 times, and it's still, whenever I think about that, because it was a powerful moment, and it was exactly what I needed to remind me again that Megan was still inside. And I don't know what it meant to her. I don't know what she saw in me. I don't know what made her do that, other than she was, God's angel. I don't know what it was. But she changed my life. And I left and I called my mom, and that was the last night I spent in Kensington. I said, I'm ready. Can you come get me? And she did. And that window of wanting to get sober, because of what happens in our brain, it starts to, slowly
Close
close.
because you get drug sick?
Yeah, exactly. And there's
Um,
this really great movie, Pleasure Unwoven, that explains like what's going on in the brain so wonderfully. But basically,
Pleasure unwoven?
yes, it's so
Okay.
good. And but basically, like, my brain starts operating just off of like that that survival mode, once that sickness is setting in. So, the more time that passed by, like the more hesitant it was her that made me make that initial call, despite
That's
all that.
amazing.
Yeah. And then,
Amazing.
yeah. And my mom ended up, because again, by the time she got me, and got me back, to like the Bucks County area, I was like, oh, I'll call rehabs myself, because she had to take me to the hospital. I couldn't walk. I had this thing, we call it Kenzo foot out there, where I had blisters all over my feet, wearing the same shoes and the rain, and being outside in the rain and then walking around in those shoes. So I just had these crazy blisters all over my feet, and walking was so painful. Like I remember there was nights where I would be out there, like, and I was begging, because I just wanted to like pop the blisters, because they were so bad, as gross as that sounds. But begging people that were like walking by, knocking on store doors, like, do you have a safety pin? And like all of them being like, you know what I mean? Um,
Wow.
just horrible. So my mom took me to the hospital because of that. By the time that I was finishing up there, all this, the sickness is setting in. So I was going to go back on what I said, and my mom made another really crucial and hard decision, and she turned me in.
You mean
So,
she 302'd you or she turned you into the
nope,
police?
she turned me into the police.
Wow.
Yeah,
And then did you get involved in Judge Ray Boylan's program?
I did. And that is why, I say it was a crucial decision, that, a big thing that helped get to where I am today, because going into jail,
Your mom's a hero.
she is. And she still is, because she's out with the Grace Project all the time. So,
Mm.
she's an amazing, amazing woman. But it wasn't easy for her. And she knew I was
No.
looking at some serious time. And so I went in, and I was, drug court was mentioned to me, and I was like, I heard that thing's a setup. Like I was like everybody else that was so skeptical of it. And I sat on it for a little bit before putting in the application. And then it was taking a little bit to get an answer. And I was like, you know what, that's okay, because whatever God sees fit, he's going to do here. Because again, like that experience in Kensington, that's when I found my faith. And, I choose to call my higher power God. But
That
I
when you
became
met that
very,
woman.
yes. So I became very God reliant, and just had faith that things were going to work out the way that they were supposed to, if I, let God do his work. So, when they ended up having me go observe drug court, and I'm praying on it, like, do I do this? And a big, actually, determining factor in taking it was Judge Boylan. So we backtracked to, the beginning of my story, when I said that I had caught about 3 charges in like the first year of using, or year and a half, whatever it was. I went and got sentenced in front of Judge Boylan, and
Oh.
she made such an impact. Now, again, it wasn't enough. I wasn't ready to stay sober completely, but I never forgot the things that she said to me, and the way that she treated me, because she was so kind, but also like stern, So she told me that if I got back in school and I did an academic restart, and I didn't get in any trouble, she would knock 6 months off of my supervision. I remember her saying, like, just telling me like that, I could do it. And that, like, she was talking about there was like a sparkle in my eye, and stuff like that. And I wanted so bad to want to stay sober for Judge Boylan. And I was like, I probably will never see this woman again. Um, but there was just something about her. So her being the drug court judge, that played a big part. And it's funny, because when I decided to take drug court, I didn't tell her that until she was going to be stepping down from the bench. I actually ended up writing her a letter about it, letting her know, like, hey, I didn't want to mention this because it would have been weird since you were my judge. And it was really cool. Then she ended up staying on, but you know, she's just an amazing person, and drug court is such a wonderful program. It gave me the structure and the resources that I needed to to stay sober. I mean, anything I needed, they would help me with. All of the different therapies that I needed. If my insurance didn't pay for it, drug court did.
It's an
They helped.
amazing program.
It
Yeah.
really is. They helped me so much. But they also kept me accountable. So I remember, like, there was a time where it was during COVID and I was speaking for a meeting. So I missed my call in. And I was like, oh no, Judge Boylan knows, like, I didn't, and I was dead set. I'm like, she's not going to sanction me. Well, she did. She was like, no, you had a responsibility. And she was, and I understand she was, 100% right. And what she did do was she gave me the option. She said, you can either go and you'll miss Thanksgiving, or you can, go and you're going to miss your nephew's birthday party. It was one or the other because I had 2 weeks I had to pick my sanction within. And I had made a promise to my brother when they were pregnant with my nephew that I would do my best to never miss anything. So I chose to miss Thanksgiving.
So wait, so you had to go serve time?
I did. I had, yeah, because it wasn't the first time she had given me, like, there was where we had to sit in the cell all day at one point because I had missed I think there was one other call in that I had missed before. So, you get in trouble for that too, because it's that routine and it's the
Sure.
accountability. And, so even though I didn't have a scheduled drug test those days, I still didn't call in like I was supposed to. So, but yeah, it was stuff like that. Like, the way that she runs that program, it's beautiful. It was exactly what I needed. You know, I always say, like, drug court helped to save my life. Probation and parole were never enough for me. I needed drug court. I needed to see the system working for me instead of against me, and that's exactly what Bucks County Drug Court does.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And the idea that you are living your life and getting these supports and learning how to live your life while you're staying sober and out in the world. That's pretty invaluable, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Huge drug court fan. I've had the honor since being sober. I've spoke for their graduation, and I've also
Nice.
been able to speak for a couple other recovery court graduations. And anytime any type of drug court or recovery court reaches out to me, I'm always like, whatever you guys need, because I'm so like eternally grateful for what they did for me. And I just, they've saved so many lives. They really have.
And again, for listeners that were unable to hear the episode with Judge Boylan, drug court, which is now called recovery court, allows people, instead of going to jail, to go to treatment. But it's a very strict
Yes.
protocol, but your sentence gets cut by going to treatment. And the recidivism rate is low. It's very successful. Because I guess to be able to have the option of doing recovery court,
Right.
you have to be really committed.
And I also think a big part of it too, like, because the structure is really important. But it's also the judge and the parole officers that they have. Like, it's the humans, the people, the connections that they make with the people that are on. Because I'd be willing to bet Bucks County Drug Court has even higher success rates than other ones, just because of the way that it's run. There's something about, like, I adored all the POs that I had. I still check in with the last PO that I had, from time to time. But there's just something about them where it's like they make you want to do better. And Judge Boylan too, like, just wanting to make her proud. It's just a really, really cool program. And anyone that, gets the opportunity to be on it, it's such a blessing. I've told them before, like, when I've talked to the POs, I'm like, if you ever have someone on the fence, you have them talk to me. You have them talk to me, because
Right. I mean, sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah.
Like, okay, tell me what your experience was, right? You do that with so many other things in your life.
Absolutely.
Tell listeners just a real quick, just new things that the Grace Project is doing.
Yeah, so the Grace Project, it started with our Kensington outreach program. And from there, we have quickly added programs and grown. So the second program that we added, which we're currently running, is our Hope for the Holidays program. So we provide 2 to 4 gifts at a minimum per child that is nominated that we agree to sponsor a meal, Christmas tree,
Oh,
all of that.
nice.
Yeah, this year we're sponsoring over 100 children. So it's really cool because what that means is, typically, like I said, it's a minimum of 2 gifts. We're usually getting like 4 or 5. So it's hundreds of gifts that we're going to get. We hand wrap them, we deliver them, their whole meal, all of that. So that's what we're doing right now. And then we have our Give a Little Hope program, which we have a couple that are pending that we'll be doing in the first couple months of the new year. And what that is I always say it's very similar to Make-A-Wish, but not as grand and different qualifiers. So it's individuals impacted by poverty, addiction, or sickness qualify for our Give a Little Hope program. So far, all of our children have fallen into that sickness category. Some of them, actually, most of them have more than one, but they've all been consistent with that. So what we do is we, call their guardian and we get information about what they like, and we plan a whole day
Oh,
tailored just to
nice.
them. Yeah, we
Like,
pick them up in a
that's
limo.
awesome.
Yeah, take them somewhere fun. So it's really cool. I love all of our programs. Kensington keeps everything green for me. It allows us to help people that are out there, people that are just like me. And then, kids I always think are innocent victims of circumstance. So our other 2 programs get to help them. And then just, I'm a big holiday person. My birthday is November 23rd, and me and my boyfriend always argue because I'm like, I'm a Christmas baby, and he's like, you're not. Your birthday's before Thanksgiving. But I just love Christmas. So I'm always
Happy
like,
birthday.
yeah. So it's beautiful to be able to take that stress off of families for the holidays and allow them to enjoy it. So that's what we have going on right now. We are talking about, adding more programs. I do want to get some sort of program at some point, when we have more funding, to help women that have been abused in any type of way, whether it's sexual or physical, just because I am a survivor of that myself. So, we're always kind of thinking about how we can help people. Everything is hope focused for us. So any different reason that somebody could lose hope, we want to come up with some sort of program to counteract it.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
what we have going on. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And just that you're giving back so much. It's a beautiful thing. That one of the things that I've been really touched by the guests that I've been able to have is that almost every one of them has really made a big effort to give back after they've been able to rehabilitate themselves, make those choices to live a life after their traumas.
And I think a
So,
big part of it, I know for me, and other people I know that are also in recovery, it's just part of like our living amends, part of how we deal with, like, when I did my resentments list on my steps, like the first person on it was myself.
mm,
So all of these things that I do, everyone's like, oh, it's so great. And it is. But part of it's selfish. I always say, like, part of it is selfish because it helps me deal with me, who I was in the past, and to make up for it. And, I get enjoyment out of helping other people. But I do see across the board a lot of people in recovery, or a lot of people that have a past, whether, it's drugs or it's criminal, or whatever it may be. It makes it easier for them to move past, kind of that wreckage that they caused in the past.
sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for sharing. And I am sure that I'm going to put a lot of information about the Grace Project in the show notes so that listeners can volunteer and or donate. And thank you so much for all of the work that you do.
Of course.